Set up following for YouTube. Joel Sains. I have no idea where I am or why I'm here. Actually, I do. I'm joined by Gordon Dymowski, my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to talk about the word Gothic and its meaning and all that fun
And
stuff.
Joel, since you don't know where you are, this is a good reminder. You should never binge drink before hitting record. Just saying. Patrick doesn't do it.
Well,
I don't do it. We wait until after the episode and then we binge drink.
you can't handle your yoo-hoo. I'll handle
Yeah,
your yoo-hoo. Okay, what?
yeah, yeah. Let me tell you that Mountain Dew Baja Blast Zero, that Diet Baja Blast really hit me hard. So
I always thought you were more of a Code Red man.
no, that's my wife. She loves Code Red. She loves Mountain Dew Code Red. You give her Code Red, she's wired for days. Um,
It actually does not have the highest soda caffeine content value. That would go to A&W cream soda.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if scientifically, Joel, you can't argue with science.
No, you can't. You can't. But we're talking about Gothic. Now, the word Gothic, according to what I've read and learned, is it's derived from when the Germans invaded during a war, which is like weird. But there's also the other part of it too, where it's used for the archetype of art and like buildings and such. So when I think of Gothic and what I learned
Well,
about it is from anytime, like, to me, is like when you see Dark Shadows and you see the high castles or the towers or the arches, that's
The Great
Gothic.
Globe itself.
well, well, if I may jump in, because I have the Wikipedia article about Gothic
Well, there we
fiction,
go.
which so let me read the characteristics of Gothic fiction. And Jewel, you need to listen because you will be quizzed.
Now, Gordon, before we start, just one little thing. Now, Joel, there are two things that use the word Gothic. There's
Right.
Gothic architecture, which is the
Yeah,
big pointy buildings,
yeah,
and that was around the 1400s.
yeah,
So
Right.
that was long. That was hundreds of years before Gothic literature. So we're
yeah,
really looking at Gothic literature, although Gothic literature often goes well in Gothic architecture. So
yes,
that's all.
Yeah, and yeah, in Gothic literature, roughly the first novel was the first for The Castle of Otranto, published in
Mm.
1764, and it's kind of a late 18th. There's some early Gothic writers like Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne, but it's kind of a 19th century kind of it goes well into the Victorian age, and so Gothic fiction. Again, Jewel, listen, you will be quizzed. Um, Gothic fiction is characterized by an environment of fear, the threat of supernatural events, and the intrusion of the past upon the present. The setting typically includes physical reminders of the past, especially through ruined buildings, which stand as proof of a previously thriving world which is decaying in the present. Characteristic settings in the 18th and 19th centuries include castles, religious buildings like monasteries and convents, and crypts. This was Jules' podcast. Just kidding. The atmosphere is typically claustrophobic, and common plot elements include vengeful persecution, imprisonment, and murder. The depiction of horrible events in Gothic fiction often serves as a metaphorical expression of psychological or social conflicts. The form of a Gothic story is usually discontinuous and convoluted, often incorporating tales within tales and framing devices such as discovered manuscripts or interpolated histories. Other characteristics, regardless of relevance to the main plot, can include sleep-like and death-like states, life burials, doubles, unnatural echoes or silences, the discovery of obscured family ties, unintelligible writings, nocturnal landscapes, remote locations, and dreams. Especially in the late 19th century, ghosts and other kinds of evil spirits. And part of why the idea of Gothic literature and Dark Shadows was suggested was the question was, why do people throw Gothic around? Is Dark Shadows Gothic? I think we can say, yeah, Dark Shadows is Gothic. That's the episode, everyone. Good night, everybody.
Well, it is and it isn't. I actually kind of talk about that in a day book. And it's in one of the two books, but I refer to it as anti-Gothic in a lot of ways. It's the for me, the essence of sort of Gothic literature and Gothic storytelling is finding romance in decay and in entropy. It is very, very, very much about things falling apart and either finding the beauty of nostalgia as things are inexorably falling apart, or finding new romance as things are falling apart and clutching onto it because it's the only thing that you have. That for me is a lot of what Gothic literature is. If let me see, I want to find that one thing. The two big early books were Castle of Otranto and oh god, what was the other? The Monk. See if there's a plot outline for Lewis's The Monk. The Monk is a profoundly messed up book. I read it in graduate school, and it's hilarious. Um, Let me see if I can find that phrase anti-Gothic, because yeah, let's see. But the Monk is, let's see, Gothic. Oh yeah. Uh, if Gothic, here's something I say. This is towards the end of 1795. The persistent optimism will push Collinwood through its most troubling nights between 1795 and 1968, creating the yin-yang of doom and hope that drives the series. If Gothic literature is about the inevitability of decomposition, Dark Shadows is wrongly pigeonholed in that genre. It is rather anti-Gothic. Liz should have committed suicide. Joshua should have staked Barnabas, and so on. But somehow, amidst all this, they actually kind of choose at the last minute progress rather than just kind of giving into decay. It's really wacky. But the Monk, you got Castle of Otranto and the Monk. Just finding synopses of these things are especially the Monk's got so much weird stuff going on in it. It Let me see. Lewis, Monk, Private Eye, um, the Monk. Here we go. Yeah, by Matthew Gregory Lewis. Um, yeah, it involves romancing nuns and just oh god. And Castle of Otranto is likewise weird. My mom had that around. So the Monk, yeah, a famous monk named Ambrosio is led astray by a demon disguised as a human woman called Matilda. Matilda coerces Ambrosio into sleeping with her, and this causes Ambrosio to embark on a descent into depravity. He commits crimes such as sorcery, rape, murder, and incest.
And remember, kids, both of these are public domain, so you can download them from google.org.
Oh yeah, yeah. Castle of Otranto. After his son, he's Manfred, the lord of the Castle of Otranto. He's the father of Conrad and Matilda, another Matilda. Yes, she's waltzing. And the husband of Hippolyta, after his son is killed by the falling helmet, this giant falling helmet. He becomes obsessed with the idea of ending his marriage with Hippolyta in pursuit of the much younger Isabella, who is supposed to marry his son. Now that's Gothic. That's where it all starts.
if like, well, Gothic gets into fear as well. So,
Mm-hmm. Well,
What?
I think
It's
too.
about death. Of course, you fear
Uh,
death. Yeah.
yeah, but I think too with Gothic, it tends to be used for even when we talk about Gothic fiction, there are very specific subgenres. There's Gothic romance, which is stuff like Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, etc., which I think was where Dark Shadows, where they were thinking it started. But there's also this genre of Gothic horror with people like Poe, um, some of the, Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, and it's a very, and I think because when we talk about Gothic, the image that comes to mind isn't. It's dark. There are two shows, Dark Shadows and Doctor Who, during from 74 to 76, because the producer at the time really leaned into more of he kind of took the Dark Shadows formula. And I don't think it's a case of where he saw one and thought, oh, I can use that for this show. I think it's just more that where the hell do stories come from? And I think the only difference is that Dan Curtis hired someone to read and give him cliff notes, whereas Philip Hinchcliffe was like, okay, well, he read. His script editor was Robert Holmes, who loved Victorian horror. He loved kind of cannibalism and possession and that kind of thing.
But he was not a
If I
caterer.
had to, right. And so I think I think when I think Gothic, I think it's more about not only the source material, but also the lighting. Because at this point, they're both very selective in how they use lights to emphasize, they tend to be darker. There are more shadows. There's more of a mood. And I think that the first year of Dark Shadows was trying to, from a direction standpoint, I think they were able to pull some of that off. I think storytelling, it's kind of hard because they're thinking, like, how do you do Wuthering Heights as how do you do something like Wuthering Heights as a soap opera based simply off an image rather than, I think Art Wallace made an effort with his shadow, but I think it wasn't until that Barnabason where I think the show was kind of like, okay, we can't fiddle around with this. Are we supernatural? Are we not? We've got to forward.
Yeah. Eventually, you gotta take a stand on that sort of thing. Now, the other interesting thing is that there are American forms of Gothic,
Mm-hmm.
such as Southern Gothic, where you get all of the Tennessee Williams stuff, and and Poe is part of that, and William Faulkner, and of course, who did William Faulkner start out writing for? Strange Tales.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Along with Lovecraft, I think he and Lovecraft might have been, writing for those guys around the same time. And if you look at a movie like Spider Baby, which we've talked about, that's a film where really you've got all of those things going on at once.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
A good proponent of Southern is Robert R. McCammon, who
Yes.
has written a couple of horror novels in that vein.
Speaking of Gothic, when I thought of Gothic tonight, and I was thinking the one person who came to mind in his stories is John Philip Betancourt, To Be Night and Beguile, and I mean really the way he's doing that story, in every way, it's a Gothic story. You have a shape shifting witch. You have this mansion that visually you can see the way he writes it is very Gothic feeling on this island of this island that literally feels very, very dark, though, and you're not exactly sure at first why it's dark, but he builds it up as this dark, not the Lord family has some issues, a lot of issues. But the place they live at, Terramore, is just, there's a dark feeling to it. Then you find out that the Lord family, massacred the natives to inherit the land, and it's just holy shit. And it's like, wow. And then you get your vampire, like I said, shape shifting witch, and then you get these people who lived underneath the water, or and it's like, holy hell. Yeah, that his story is Gothic too. So yeah, go check that out. There'll be a link when we're done.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at Dark Shadows of Gothic, I think it's starting. It starts off with the idea that they're going to lean into that, because you have two outsiders. You have Victoria Winters and Brooke Devlin heading into a place where the house is. The Collins family is not at the height of their powers. Like, you can see where they've been on a period of stagnation. I mean, Liz hasn't been out for 18 years. Roger is just a bastard. David is a garbage for every human being. Carolyn's kind of a party girl, and you kind of get the sense, and I think it's part of why I think Curtis was so hesitant to do it as a daytime show. Because this isn't something people want to turn into. You don't want to see a family in decline. You want to see drama. You want to see, like, so and so is dating such and such, and
you want some
and
Horatio Alger.
Yeah, you want something where you go, okay, yeah, it's drama, but you know that the only place you can go is up. And I think that trying to deal with a woman trying to find her past, that's interesting, but we never really find out what Victoria Winter's past is. Devlin is there to be kind of I don't think he's so much the hero as he's a force to go up against Roger. So there's a source of conflict. And very early on, because it's all dealing with bleeder valves and, and like I think the idea was to have conflict and let that drive that, and then the ghost stuff would have been very superficial and very much the strange noise, oh hey, look, there's a secret room. But then the show was kind of like, okay, can't really make up its mind whether it's totally in the supernatural, or if it's just if it's like one of those, or if it's like Scooby-Doo, you pull off the mask and I would have gotten away from it for you pesky Collins kids. And I think with the death of Bill Malloy, when the ghost stuff starts coming out, they go, okay, we can do ghosts, but where do we go with that? And eventually they start working through some of those issues, and then you get to the Laura storyline, the Phoenix storyline. And I think that's where they kind of said, okay, we want to crank up the supernatural stuff, but I'm not sure if there's documentation where they started talking about a vampire at this point, or if it's, what do we do? What do we do? What kind of supernatural thing can we do? So they choose, rather than say like a werewolf, or even something that's a little bit more obscure, like say a cryptid, they go with a something that is mythological in nature. Because who are we to say? Nobody's going to go and say, like with the Addams storyline, you could argue, oh yeah, they're doing Frankenstein. It's not that a good version of Frankenstein, or we know where it's coming from. With Laura, you don't. With the Phoenix storyline, everyone knows what a phoenix is. You're just kind of creating rules you go along. The series starts, and we just put stuff in, or are we a Gothic horror show with romance? And I think once you get to Barnabas, that's where the real thinking starts. They start applying it, and it's like, hey, look, we are a Gothic horror show. We're a Gothic horror soap opera. We have romance, we have intrigue, and we're still looking at a family that's on the decline. But now you've got a new factor which can, eventually Barnabas is like the family's protector. in a weird way. But you now have a situation where the show is firmly planting its flag, and we're in with the supernatural. We are that is where and that's where we're investing our time and effort. And then by the time you get to the very end of Dark Shadows, it's like, well, you know what? We're not going to do as much because it's the 1841 parallel time storyline is a coda. It's they kind of go, okay, well, we've got so many months, we know we're off the air. We've got all these costumes left over. What do we do? Let's just lean into the Gothic. The supernatural stuff will be, Brutus Collins' ghost and the lottery. There's no real, it's not like Morgan Collins ends up becoming a vampire. Although Keith Prentice as a vampire would be kind of interesting because he'd be very loud at it. But I wonder, I think that was kind of where they kind of said, you know what? Yeah, we did all this horror stuff. Let's just do Gothic. And it would have been interesting if, say, Dark Shadows had started with the 1841 parallel time sequence, and maybe laid the groundwork with like a Gothic storyline in the 1800s, flash forward to the 60s. But the problem is you don't watch soap operas for historical drama. You watch them because it's like at the time you're a housewife or you're a mom and you're bored and there's nothing better to do at 4 p.m.
Yeah. Well, you're dreading something even worse, coming in through the door.
Yeah. I think too, now I do think if they would have did 1841 first, if they would have had that in mind, I do think it would have worked for that time. You know what I mean? I'm with you on that because it's so, considering how deep they went with, a lot of the main characters, how psychological all the characters were, there were secrets there, numbers of secrets. You had Nancy Barrett's character who was better than Victoria Winters in a lot of ways, and how they revealed that was smart. The reveal of who her mother was. And my only real complaint of 1841, and it's not a big one, is because that's the thing. Brutus is such a heavy heel. He's a great heel that my question to you guys is this: with that, is it because Brutus is such a heel that they don't completely turn Julia Collins heel? She's somewhat of a heel, but she's not all the way heel.
That's a very complex question. I don't know that it ever occurred to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at that point they're like, it's over, and we can either just we can phone it in. I'm sure Sam Hall was like, looking at the supply closet, seeing how many boxes of pencils he could smuggle out every day. Or like, oh, here are these reams of paper, and shoving them in like a big overcoat. And, Gordon Russell's like taking the little packets of coffees because he doesn't want to go to the store and buy them Folgers. But
Cremora. He's stocking up on all the Cremora he can.
The day old donuts, but I think at that point they were like, do we go out with a bang or a whimper? And I think 1841 parallel time, they're going out with a bang. I don't think it would have occurred to them to for them was probably like, okay, what's the curse? Okay, well, it's Brutus Collins who murders his wife and his lover and forces people to go in that room. I think and if we're looking at Gothic literature, I think Julia might not have been intended to be the heel as much as a complication.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are getting really annoyed that I'm using finger quotes because that is so 90s.
I don't know. Finger quote yourself to whatever extent you think you need to.
I hear that if you finger quote too much, you go blind.
God, I was terrified of this moment. And now here it is.
Oh, oh my God. I do, I do think 1841 was definitely a Gothic story. I mean, it was really well done. You're right. The Juliet character is more of an annoyance. She's keeping the secret from Melanie, from Nancy Barrett's character, which it was smartly done. How they did it was really well done. Again, it was more thought out too. It was better thought out, and so the way they do that, they do have a ghost. They have Brutus, and that's another thing too. You don't know it's Brutus right away. They think it they didn't know who it was. Then they think it's James Forsythe. Then they find out no, it's not James Forsythe. That they swerve you a bit, but it's not a swerve that pisses you off. It's a swerve that shocks the hell out of you. It's like, oh shit, I did not see that twist to come. And it's so cool. So yeah, I'm with you. I do think that if they would have started with this, yeah, it's very, very, very watchable. It's very entertaining. It keeps you interested because you have your love triangle, you have your ghost, you have your supernatural stuff going on, and you have all these secrets. And not just that secret, you have the secret of the fact that Bramwell impregnated Catherine. I mean, the audience knows he did it, but Morgan didn't. So it's really, really well done. And I do think from a Gothic standpoint too, where Dark Shadows really, the mood of Dark Shadows feels very Gothic. Like in the beginning, when you see the black, white, light and shadow mood, and the one constant thing people say in the beginning episodes that you hear enough of, you hear it from Maggie, you hear it from Burke, you hear it from Liz, you hear it from David, you hear it from Roger, is the ghost. You hear about the widows, you hear it from Carolyn, you keep hearing about ghosts. So from a conscience standpoint, the characters are keeping sort of this Gothic feel of Dark Shadows within the frame of the story by mentioning it. They didn't have to show it right away. But when they do show it, David leaves the house. He's gone. He runs away. Liz is upset about it because, Victoria found the bleeder valve in David's room. David leaves. He takes the bleeder valve with him after getting it out of Victoria's room. And she's alone in the house. The storm hits. The power goes out, and it's your first ghost, sighting. And it's really well done. It presents that. I'll be right back, guys. I got to go take care of something.
I think there's a beating imminent. At least I'd like to think so, but I don't know. Yeah, I still think that the term gets thrown around a little too loosely, and if you get really used to a solid definition, and for me, it's love within entropy, it's love within decay. Because you really can't have, I think, anything Gothic without both of those elements. You really have to have both of them, and if you do, then in the words of Carl Weathers, you have a stew going.
Yeah, I think it's also tough too, because when people use Gothic literature, I think they're not using the definition that I wrote. It's usually something that's dark and moody, and there's got to be
it's a music video.
Better, right? And I mean, you look at the Collins family, kind of after Barnabas comes in, they're actually starting to, in a weird way, get healthier. Like they're still dealing with supernatural threats, but there isn't the ghost of Quentin comes, they're driven out of Collinwood, but at some point they make it back. In Gothic literature, it probably would have been just devastating. It would have been the House of Usher type stuff.
Yes. And by the way, have you been watching this? Well, no, you haven't. While you have Netflix, take a look at this Fall of the House of Usher series
Okay.
with Bruce Greenwood
Okay.
that they've been doing. It's really good. I think it's got Mary McDonnell. I mean, it's just got this incredible cast. Um, and a good cast is worth repeating.
Yeah. I'll check it out tonight. You guys check out the. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Jewel, is everything going all right at home?
Well, I had to prevent my daughter from, fighting with my son. It, told the kids it's bedtime. My daughter did not go to bed. She come downstairs to, agitate my son, which, kids are kids. So I told my daughter, hey, it's bedtime. I told my son, hey, it's still bedtime. Go to bed.
So how did you consequence them? Did you learn them good?
I told my daughter if she, tried to fight with her brother, she would be grounded from her phone. And she said, "You're not a good dad," and went up to bed. So,
did she also say, "You're doing that so I can't call for help"?
Oh God, no.
It could have been worse, Joel. In the 90s, there was a comic by the name of Dana Gould, and in one of his routines, and this became a catchphrase for a while. He's talking about how he's smart enough with his father, and now that he's like in his 30s and he's listening to playing loud music downstairs, he's afraid that if he complains, I'll say something like, "Go to bed, old man." And I'm sure your daughter could have said that to you. "Oh, go to bed, old man." I know I said that to my dad plenty of times, but he was, it would just make him mean. He wasn't really like, is like, don't you talk to me, you young kid. And Dad wasn't. Luckily, he was only verbally and emotionally abusive, not physically. So I can, I've learned to deal with those emotional scars.
See, all my father does is talk about how much he wishes I was like Jewel.
Oh, I'm.
Constant.
Oh, by that, does he mean you grow facial hair and wear T-shirts?
Well, 1 out of 2. 1 out of 2. He just said, "Jewel, now that's the sort of son I wish I had." This is the only reason I watch these things, Patrick, is so that I can see the man you could have been. You were a real man. You'd be like Jewel son.
You could be wearing shirts with collar and buttons and be stylish.
Or I don't wear any of the. I don't wear button t-shirts. And I don't wear pants. So there's that.
Even if they're made of lycra, Jewel, they'd cling to you in so many ways.
I am a shorts man. I don't like pants.
You know what you are, Jewel? You're an old cowhand from the Rio Grande.
Jewel, you're a street walking cheetah with a heart full of napalm.
Another sort of to me of how Gothic Dark Shadows is when they get into the cemetery aspect of it too, because they don't show Eagles Hill, they show the other cemetery first, and you have this groundskeeper, and the way they would play with these doors sometimes is like, I remember in The West Wing, the door once opened briefly by itself, and then it closed, and then one time Carolyn and Vicky are standing in a hallway, and the door opens, and it's Elizabeth, and she scared them because they're looking for David. Well, in the cemetery, Vicky and Frank Gardner go because Vicky smells jasmine. So when you see this cemetery, it looks creepy. It's very this Gothic looking feeling when they step inside this little mausoleum, and it's like, what the heck, man? It's a bit creepy to go into a cemetery at night. Um,
Well, it is. I mean, Joel, have you gone into a cemetery at night?
no, no, I have not.
That's where my paper route used to take me. And let me tell you, it's no fun. I don't know who was reading the paper there in the cemetery that late at night, but that's where the route took me every evening. I had to deliver strange items um, to to just a little stone building, and I'll never know that much about it. But I would get a bag every day downtown, and at a newsstand that was closed, but this bag would be hanging on a hook, and there would be a note saying, "Patrick, take this to Pud Stench Memorial Cemetery," and it was a big cemetery in Louisville, and I would take it and I would drop it off. And I never looked inside, except there was always something kind of moving in it, but it didn't make sounds like animals that, you and I would know. It's like a cross between a hiss, a snake's hiss, and a baby crying. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do any of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah,
It's a fun
and
story, though.
I mean, I always thought that maybe, and I had a lot of bad luck with cemeteries myself because I would often, in trying to find things to do, I'd say to like someone I was dating, "Hey, let's go to the cemetery." She'd be like, "Well, 7 o'clock on a Friday night, there are better things we can do on a date." And I said, "Let's go to the cemetery." And then, I'd want to, we'd go, and she'd be obviously uncomfortable, and then I'd say, "Hey, see those two graves? One's a man's name, one's a woman's name. Let's pretend we're those other people
Let's
and
lie
just role
down on
play."
them.
And it's
Sure, that's a normal
well, we wouldn't go
date.
that far because the woman would storm out. So
Well, she was missing out. She was missing out on love, and I don't know. I don't know. Jules, certainly you must have tales of this.
Um, from the cemetery, no, no. I don't have. I have no tales from the cemetery at all. And I've been to many cemeteries. Uh, but I will. That's just.
I
That's
remember
just.
that homeless man named Gravy Boat that you said you took to the cemetery once. Remember that, Jewel?
I'll,
We
I'll
don't
tell
talk
you.
about that, do we?
I'll tell you the two most. I guess you want to call them gothic tales I have in my life. Um, I was 9, my brother was 8, and behind my uncle's trailer is a creek, a small creek. And we would always go down there and skip stones or just go down there and use our little fishing rods that we had as kids.
Uh huh.
And this time we didn't have our fishing rods. We were just going down there to play. And because we would run around the trees, the trees were very spaced out and you could run. And we did, and we got tired and we took a break. And we would always sit by the creek. It was very small. I mean, you could cross it all the time unless it rained. And we would always, I never felt any danger down there until this one day. Uh, my brother and I were just sitting there, and we heard this sound. We heard like a stick break, and you see a cat occasionally.
Sure.
We look up, and there was this man whose face was severely burned, and he had this robe on, and he was holding this stick, and he was looking at us. Me and my brother locked eyes with this guy, and it's terrified the hell out of me and my brother. We were just frozen with fear. And we eventually got up and started screaming. And we ran back to the house. We got our mother, and she went down there and she goes, "Come show me where you saw this person." And we we're crying. I'm like, no, Mom, don't go down there. Don't go down there, because it just felt wrong. It felt like he had some sort of an evil intent. And we took our mother down there and showed her where he was standing. And my mom's friend went around. You could go around the creek, and he goes, there are footprints here. Somebody was standing here. He could see 2 bare feet, the foot imprints of the mud. So somebody was there, that we did see something. And that's the scariest ghost, I guess, whether you want to call it a ghost or not. I don't know what to call it. But that was a scary, I guess, Gothic encounter, if you will.
Jewel, that's a great story.
It's true.
No, I mean, I believe you. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that's a. What do you think that was all about?
I have my suspicions, because there was a gentleman who did live back in the woods. He had a log cabin that was back there, and it caught fire, and they never found the guy's body. Now, people might say, well, he just burned up inside. Years later, many, when I was a teen, me and my brother and my cousin, because by the time I turned 15, I long forgot about it. I just tried to block it out of my mind. But when you see something, your memory will come back to you in a flash. And as we're going through the woods to go to BP gas station, because there was a BP gas station across from what we called Oliver Park. It was Oliver Ball Field. It's Eberly Park is what it is. And there was this BP gas station that you could cut through the woods to get to. And we were going, and we'd always come across where where this guy's cabin was, where it looked like it burned down.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that stick that he was holding. I remember the person's face looking. I remember this person looking at us. There was the stick, and there was the robe. It looked like the robe that the person was wearing. And I stood there, and my brother said, come on, don't think about it. He stopped with me. So did my cousin. He said, guys, it was your imagination. And I told my brother right before we graduated high school, I said, I'm 17. That was not our imagination. That our minds were not playing tricks on us.
And what did he say?
He said, I don't disagree with you, but I don't want to really talk. He didn't want to talk about it. My brother was somebody, when he didn't want to talk about something, he just didn't want to talk about it. Like, he would not want to talk about, when he said, look, I don't want to talk about it. And when he said that, I respected his boundary. But, I had to tell somebody, and I told him, because he was there with me the day we saw the guy. He was the only other person. He's long passed, and it's like, I know what we saw. That was not a figment of my imagination. That was somebody, and I do stress that. I don't, in my opinion, I believe in God. I believe in the afterlife. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that there's a heaven and a hell. And I know there are people who don't, and I respect people's, beliefs and stuff. I don't try to step on and force mine on it.
It's okay. You're safe. We're not going to attack.
You know what I mean? I don't try to enforce mine on others. And
sure. You don't kick people out of groups,
Right. No, I don't. I don't try to. unless they're actually being a dick. But with this, somebody, I believe that was somebody fucking with me and my brother. I don't, and
For what reason?
well, I can't prove. I have my mom's word on this, and again, another person who's gone. Again, the people who could attest to certain things aren't here.
Yeah.
My mom knew the guy who lived in the cabin, and I guess what she had said that they went to school together. He had a crush on her. I believe my mom. My mom's never lied to me, at all. I've never caught her in a lie, at least. And she said that the police had said to her that the guy's brother collected the insurance. My mom knew this guy very, very well. And she goes, he never had a brother. He was an only child. And I said, how do you know that? She goes, I know. He was an only kid. And I thought about what we saw in the woods after she told me that this guy faked his death. Because the person who got questioned about that fire was my mother. Why, I don't know. Other than the fact that she knew him. Like, my mom is not the person. My mom was not a person who would set someone's house on fire. My mom was a sweet, sweet lady. And what I saw was very cruel. And as a kid, scared the shit out of me. As an adult now, does it scare me? No.
No.
But as a kid, yeah, it did, because I didn't know what the hell I was seeing at the time. But do I think me and my brother were crazy what we saw? No. Do I think we hallucinated? Because the first thing people said to us is we had overactive imaginations. And yeah, did me and my brother have active? Yes, all kids do. But my imagination was not running away from me that day. I was not dreaming. I was wide awake. It was about 10:45, somewhere in that morning on a Sunday. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget. We weren't sitting. Me and my brother were on our knees. We were on our knees looking at the creek. And we just heard this sound, and we both looked up. Same time, looked right across and saw this dude standing there. Saw this burn marks on their face. Didn't see their arms because everything else was behind, other than, behind this cloak thing that they had on. They had this stick, this large, looked like a walking stick. And that's it. That's what I saw. I don't know if it was again, I don't believe it was a ghost. But if you want to call it that, you're entitled to your opinion.
Well, I mean, I have no idea what you saw, what you encountered, what you scratched or smelled or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when I was a kid and I got this down at the little convenience store. I got this sandwich, microwaved it. Microwaves are kind of new. And I was bringing it back home, and the moisture had loosened the adhesive on the bottom of it, and it hit the pavement. And I couldn't get it back. That's the closest I have, Jewel, to that. And it makes me feel lucky that that's as bad as it got for me. I can't imagine what it was like to experience something that, I mean, that's like coming out of a Stephen King book. Do you think that event has colored your tastes or interests in literature, or kind of your interest in these sort of macabre matters?
I don't know. I can't answer that with a yes or no. I
Well,
just know
here's an easy one. Were you interested in this stuff before that?
the when I got the reason I got interested in watching, the macabre and stuff like that was after our mother showed us horror movies. And
And was
that's
that after this event?
no, 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 because the event took place before Mom showed us John Carpenter's house.
Okay.
Because Mom did not. That was in, I want to say, June or July when we saw this person. Mom didn't show us John's Halloween until about late August. It was closer to fall than it was. Like, it was more going toward fall than still summer. Like, I know summer's in August, but when you live in Pennsylvania, fall more is starting to somewhat peak during August. It's going to show up, basically, that.
Yeah.
But so I know when I was shown John's Halloween, and do I think that was the reason my mother showed that moment in our time? No, my mom made it very clear why she showed us that she wanted, she wanted us to know, hey, yes, this is fiction here. Yes, there are people out there who can hurt you, but Michael Myers is not a real person.
Yeah.
Jason Voorhees is not a real person. That's what my mother's real motives were. Now, us going off and watching movies, by ourselves, or just watching movies because we were curious of what was in them, that was more, because our mother had showed us movies. And that's the thing, too. My mother did get accused, because we saw this person, my mother did get accused of showing us horror movies. She's like, I haven't showed the kids anything like that yet. Now, later the year she did, but she had not shown us John's Halloween at that time yet. Because with the summer, especially in the summer, we were always outside. Like, we never spent summer indoors in Pennsylvania. Like, we were always outside, me and my brother. That's something I'll never forget, being a kid. So when we saw that, we were in my uncle's yard. Now, we were always allowed in my uncle's yard. It's not like we were going to be in trouble for being behind his trailer, because the only thing that my mom ever told us about being back there was, number one, because you're near a creek, watch for snakes, and two, don't cross the creek without a parent. We weren't allowed to go through the woods without parents when we were little kids, obviously. But when we became like 14, 15, 16, got old enough to defend ourselves and know how to defend ourselves. Yeah, they did, as long as we didn't do it by ourselves. Like, we had one or two people with us, because parents are always cautious about their kids, especially when they go somewhere. Whether it's going through the woods or not. Look, the same BP gas station, I could take the road to. I could take the main road to. Okay? The woods was a shortcut. It cut, like, I want to say maybe 5-6 minutes. Again, I'm going off of memory, though, too, for the going through the woods. But it cut just enough time where you didn't have, because you had to walk up where I lived when I was a kid. You had to go up this very steep hill. You had to, what's called Butte Hill or Butte Road. It was a very steep hill. Then it was a straight shot because there was this open field where this house was at one point in time. That house isn't there no more. Because that's the route me and my wife take to. We go through West Lyson and we pass where I used to live, and because West Lyson is where my mom's friend lives, and we pass there. We pass where I used to live, and we passed an open field, the open field where a house was, and we go to Oliver or Eberly Park. I always used to call it Oliver Park when I was a kid, but it's Eberly. It's always been Eberly Park. And the gas station. Now the building is still there. Where the BP got, because there's a what is it? There's a laundromat right there. There's a laundromat. There's always been a laundromat right next to the gas station because there's a trailer park right there. And the trailer park's like across, like just across from Eberly Park, what we call Oliver Ball Field. And there was, at one point in time, there was only one ball field there when I was a kid. Now there's two ball fields, and the basketball court, which used to be like when you pulled in, now the basketball court is moved back and it's in a fenced area. The basketball court was not right in a fenced area when I was a kid. That I remember. So sorry for the story thing.
No, it's fascinating.
But go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
What's Gordon? You got any Gothic stories? The cemetery.
I kind of really moody, scary thing I can talk about is that for a while I suffered from very severe sleep paralysis, which is it's when what would happen is my awareness would be awake. So I knew I was awake. So I go, okay, I'm going to get up. And it's literally in my head, I was screaming like, you got to get up, like and I could feel my heart starting to pound. It's like having having an anxiety attack. And it was for no reason. It wasn't like okay, I did something wrong, but it was be trying to, okay, let me see if I can roll myself out of bed. Or if I were dreaming in this state, if I were in a dream and Patrick's in a dream and I'm going through this, I would be thinking, Patrick, I just insulted you. Please slug me. Or Patrick, slap me in the face. I just made fun of you. Not because Patrick's that kind of person, but in my head, I knew if I could get something to shock me back into consciousness, and obviously I would get out of it, but it's one of those really, I think probably now that I have, this was long before I started caring for Mom, much less living on my own. So it ended a few years ago, but those periods were just, it's scary because it's not like,
Gordon, did it ever manifest like as a figure or something that was holding you down or in the room?
It never felt like somebody was holding me. It just felt like I was stuck. Like my brain was working, but my body wasn't. It's like I felt trapped in my own body.
I didn't start having those until I knew what they were scientifically. And so for the longest time, I was able to kind of narrate through in my mind, what was happening. And so I kind of knew, I had that as a little bit of armor. I was in my 40s, I think, when I started having those episodes, as all related to narcolepsy and all my other sleep weirdness. And what I would do is I would focus on making Jewel go away. No, moving my tongue. I always felt like if that was the innermost like little muscle I had control over, and I would just focus everything on that. But that's an adult who knew what a hypnopathic state was and hypnagogic state and all of that weirdness. There's a good movie by a guy named Asher called, I think it's called The Nightmare. It doesn't get into the science enough. I wish it did, but it's about sleep paralysis. And of course, there's a great book, The Terror That Comes in the Night, which you may have read, which is about sleep paralysis also. It's a nasty, nasty condition. And I still suffer from it now and then.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go.
Okay. Let's see. Hey, Joel. Yeah, he's talking with his kids. Yeah, I think that once he gets. Yeah.
He's doing God's work.
I don't want to keep. Yes, he's doing God's work. Let's see. Hey, Joel. No, he's taking care of the kids. Yeah, I think once he comes back, we can call it a night.
I think you're right. This has been an unusual discussion. It's I was not expecting that story. I mean, that was like walking into a creepypasta. Which I'll tell you what, while we're waiting, are you familiar with those as a horror reader and so on? And do you have much respect for them or affinity for them, or what's your take on them as an expression of modern horror literature?
I've not been exposed to too many of them, so I think they work. You know, it's not it's something where I'd need to read more so that I can make a much more. I mean, what I've read, I've liked, but I would never. Yeah, I'd rather read more before I can say like, oh, I think they're useful or I think they're garbage, because I just think it's, you know, I just don't have enough experience to make a judgment.
I am a big fan. I like them. I think there are a number of them that are absolutely terrifying.
What's that, guys?
Talking about bathing. Baths that I've taken.
Yeah, bathing, soap and water scare the hell out of me.
Interesting.
Yeah, can't explain it. Can't explain it. Jewel, it's been great.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. It was good. It was good. Is everything okay at home?
Yeah, just had to make sure my kids went to bed.
Sure.
But first of all, guys, yeah, thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys tomorrow night for Archive 81.
You're gonna love it.
Yeah, it's a great show. Episode 1 tomorrow night review is 10:30. Good, guys.
It's fine with me.
Works with me.
Links to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Links to the Dark Shadows Daybook of Bow is going to be in the description box. Links to Be Night, Jonathan Belcourt's To Be Night and Beguile is going to be in the description box. Guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.
Take care.
Yep. Good night, all.